That brings me to the second problem that I've seen over and over again through my show and in myself: lack of knowledge. Now let me explain this with a personal story. Back in the early 90s, I was on a roll. I was working out every day. My career was beginning to take off. And every couple of years, though, I'd experienced this really crazy, excruciating pain in my legs and in my feet. It was bad enough and it lasted long enough that I went to a doctor to have it checked out. And one doctor after another said the exact same thing: you're working out too much, and their conclusion was always the same: just take it easy for a while and it'll pass. Well, you know what? I would. I'd ease up on my workouts. For a few months, the pain would go away. Problem solved, right? No, it kept coming back. A few times over the years, doctors would mention, Montel, we might have checked to see you might have MS. And I didn't believe it, and they didn't believe it, because I was in too good a shape and I didn't fit the profile. But finally in 1999, I saw a specialist, and he checked me out, and without any warning, he said to me, "You've got MS." This doctor looked me in the face and said, "Montel, I'm sorry, I got to tell you this, you got MS. And you know what, dude, life's going to change for you. Sorry, it's going to change. You're not going to be able to do your show, because I think it may be a little bit too stressful. And you're going to have to really avoid all stressful situations. And this working out thing you're doing, you really need to stop, because it's just putting too much of a load on your nervous system. It's going to destroy you." And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I walked in this door and worked out this morning. So how are you going to tell me right now that just because you think I should stop, I have to stop? He gave me this devastating diagnosis without any prognosis. And I knew nothing about MS. I had no idea what to expect, and all I did was imagine the worst. I'll tell you something. It sent me on a spiral of depression and anger and suicidal thoughts. That was a time when lack of knowledge almost killed me, literally. Lack of knowledge can impact every aspect of your life. Don't let it. Every day is an opportunity to learn something about what's holding you back. Take that opportunity. Start learning. The third obstacle is figuring out a way to really know yourself, which means you have to take a deep breath and come face to face with something you don't want to come face to face with, and that's your ego. Some people are arrogant. They have way too much ego. And some people doubt themselves, and they have way too little. Very few of us have just the right amount. If you have too much ego, you'll push others away. You won't accept their help. And when you think you know everything, there's no room for growth. But on the other hand, if you have too little ego, you'll make bad choices because you don't value yourself. Now, somewhere in between, there's a healthy ego. And people with healthy egos are just like Buddha. They don't have to do anything, they can just be. And wouldn't that be so nice? And I know the subject all too well because I've wrestled with too much and too little ego throughout my entire life. There have been times in my life when I've gotten a big head and I've pushed people away. And what do you do when that happens? Well, you know what you got to do? You got to get real. You got to get a reality check. You got to get someone to tell you the truth and be prepared to hear it. But I got to tell you, I think more people suffer from the opposite problem, and that's the problem of too little ego. I know I have. I've heard that little voice inside of my head that says, "You're not good enough. You can't do it. You'll never succeed." And the bad news is, that little voice will probably never go away. Every day, even now, after running my show for as many years as I have, I still find myself arguing with that little voice inside of my head, that voice that says, "Montel, you're not good enough." So what do? What do I do about it? I set out to prove that little voice of doubt wrong every day. And you can too. If you're like me and you hear that little voice in your head, you will never feel good enough, no matter how much success you have. So use it to move yourself forward. Prove that little voice wrong. Now start looking at your self-doubts as opportunities. Now, I think one of the sources of self-doubt that so many of us suffer from is lack of support. Someone let us down early on in life, or someone wasn't there for us, or someone criticized us when we needed praise. Do you know what I'm talking about? Let me tell you, you're just going to have to let this one go. If I had let lack of support stop me, I would have never made it out of grade school. I'll never forget the day this principal walked into our classroom and he looked at all of us and he said, "Half of you are going to be dead by the time you're 20, so I don't even know why I'm bothering to teach you." And it was from that second on, that I realized one thing. And it's the one thing that's gotten me to where I am today. And I'm going to tell you, it's the one thing that you don't need to have that kind of an impact to get the same realization. I realized that day that no one would own the definition of who I am but me. Period. Now, luckily, I was able to let that go, let it roll off my back. I was determined to not live down to anybody else's negativity, but I was also smart enough to know I couldn't do it alone. I found support through study groups, through teachers that I trusted, and my family. Support is vital, and too many of us don't realize just how important it is. This culture places way too much value on the cowboy, the guy who goes out and does it alone. But the truth is, anything anyone has ever achieved in life that's worth achieving was done with help. When I was diagnosed with MS, the doctor told me to go home and basically just prepare to die.
How dare you define me? I walked in this office, one person. Now I'm going to walk out of this office the exact same person with just some words that you've said. So now all of a sudden you're going to tell me I need to go home and die? Not happening. So I decided to go home and live instead. And I've embarked on that ever since. And that's exactly what I think.
If I had listened to him, I wouldn't be here today. And again, I knew I needed support. To this day, I continue to surround myself with people who lift me up and support me. I don't know everything about my disease, so I seek out doctors who have the answers. As a fitness enthusiast, I continue to seek out trainers and nutritionists. If I'm feeling down, I talk to a family member or even a therapist. I have a team that I rely on, and you need to build your own team as well. So many people underestimate the power of support. From getting healthy to making good financial decisions. You will never have all the answers, and surrounding yourself with the right people could literally be the difference between life and death. Lack of support can crush you. Finally, I want to talk about the real tough one, and that's your emotional state. Your emotional state has a direct effect on how you look at the world and how successfully you pursue your passions. Too many times we let anxiety and depression overwhelm us. We're an anxiety-ridden society today for many reasons. We worry about everything, from fire to flood to hurricanes to terrorism. The safety of our loved ones, you name it, we worry about it. When we're at work, we take our problems from home and it affects our performance. When we're at home, we let our problems from work get in the way of our time spent with our families. Precious time, I might add. That constant nagging anxiety will ultimately wear you down and prevent you from opening yourself up to really living. And for many of us, that anxiety can spiral out of control and down into a deep depression. It's a tragedy that many in our society view depression as a dirty word, even though it's a disease, an epidemic, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Over 97 million prescriptions are written every single year for antidepressants, and 1/4 of the population is affected. What's going on here? Why are we in denial? Why are we ashamed of a disease? Believe me, I get it. I didn't realize until after my diagnosis with MS how depressed I really was. And today, I struggle all the time with the emotional roller coaster that MS puts me through. But I've learned this: you can't hide from it. Dealing with your depression is hard work, but you have to face your emotions head on. Don't let problems fester. Emotionally, you owe it to yourself to put your worries, your anxieties, your problems right on the table and work through them. I just spoke to you about support. And when it comes to depression or anxiety, it's crucial to get support. For some, it may be a friend to lean on. Others, you may need a doctor. But most importantly, we've got to face our problems wherever they come from. I wish I could tell you that there was some really shortcut or easy way of getting rid of anxiety or depression, but there isn't. Medication helps some people, therapy helps others. For many of us, it comes down to hard work, and I mean daily hard work. If you try something and it doesn't work, try something else. But letting depression bog you down cheats you out of the only life you get to live.